too high, with nowhere to fall down to, empathy around you. Standing looking back, you heard it all before now, losing what you didn't know you had. Fearing what you want is near it, but you're really trying to get away from it. Basic instincts overpowering, you still have this urge. When this could be good enough for us, this could be good enough for us. When this could be good enough for us, this could be good enough for us. This could be good enough for us. This could be good enough for us. Standing up too high, with nowhere to fall down to, empathy around you. Standing looking back, you heard it all before now, losing what you didn't know you had. Fearing what you want is near it, but you're really trying to get away from it. Basic instincts overpowering, you still have this urge. This could be good enough for us. This could be good enough for us. When this could be good enough for us.
Carry on, the battle's on, the war's not over, the dawn's not that far away. Hop back on the saddle soon, you soulless soldier, the dark can consume your brain. All we ever wanted was a little air to breathe, but all we got are ashes of our old memories.
And good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Talladega Super Speedway for tonight's coverage of FTF Grand National Series Racing as we get set to go for the running of the Kicking the Tires 200 live here at Talladega. My name is Blake McCandless, and in a little bit I'll be joined by Justin Prince and, of course, Zach Johnson, as always, down in the virtual production trailer, but we are already ready to get things set to go here tonight at Talladega. We have just completed qualifying, and as is customary here, we will have an unofficial heat that will be taking place here in the next couple of moments. These will feature cars that did not make their way into qualifying. Now, of course, tonight, with it being Talladega and a very popular destination in these Xfinity Series cars, we have already had to stifle through about 20 to 30 cars that we have already had to send home before they could even make this session. And, of course, these 9 cars, unfortunately, they will not be making their way onto the grid either, so a bit of an unofficial race right here for some drivers that missed out on the festivities tonight. They'll run 3 laps as we look forward to get ready to go here in just a couple of moments, but different sights that we'll see tonight at Talladega, and as we say that, we'll welcome in my broadcast partner Justin Prince. And Justin, good to see you tonight, and I think Talladega always produces great racing. I don't think it should be any different tonight.
Absolutely. This is going to be an interesting one, to say the very least, for some of these drivers tonight. 76 laps the distance. Strategy is going to be very important, but also expecting a lot of momentum throughout many of these packs tonight. It's going to be intriguing to see which drivers come out on top and how some drivers work together here to try and maintain momentum throughout this field.
And actually, I'll issue a correction on that. Everybody that is in this server will make the main event. So this is pretty much just a formality here to get everybody sorted out and squared away before we get going tonight. There were, and usually we see this in here, there was about half the field that elected not to put down a time in qualifying. And everyone in this heat that will run for 3 laps, they are part of that group that did not elect to put a time down in qualifying. So everybody got in the server through some knockout qualifying that we had. So what we said earlier is true, that there were about 20, 30 cars that did not have the owner's points or the speed to qualify for the race tonight. So those, ladies and gentlemen, were sent home tonight. Otherwise, we will look forward to the rest of the drivers who were able to make their way in. And, of course, the racing that will take place later on tonight for 76 laps around the Talladega Super Speedway. Now, different than what we saw last night, Justin. Last night in the Super Speedway Series, we saw the conclusion to a championship, but we saw the NASCAR Cup Series cars make their way around Talladega, and with these Xfinity cars, we're likely to see a little bit different racing here tonight as well.
Yeah, much different racing I'm expecting a little bit, actually. We're expecting potentially 2 to 3 wide throughout much of the pack tonight. We're also expecting these drivers to utilize a lot of bump drafting as well throughout this pack, but as well, temperature management is also going to be very critical, Blake, because these cars are known to overheat fairly quickly. All those things are major factors, and it's going to be intriguing how these drivers then in turn adapt, but it's still a bunch of fun when it comes to racing these types of cars here at Talladega.
And actually, I'm looking at our official D&Q sheet. It includes 41 drivers. That's right, 41 drivers who attempted to find their way to qualify in here, and they are being sent home. So a huge crowd, 84 cars looking to come out tonight and try their luck here at FTF at Talladega. And there's some big names involved in those drivers that did not qualify for this race. Longtime FTF regulars, Arnold Columbia, Mike Fallon, just to mention a couple, John Poole, Dalton Cowden, Andy Margot, who runs in the Cup Series, Justin Malillo. So a lot of names out of this one. The final 7 or 8 spots on the grid, rather, decided by owners' points or provisionals. As we get this heat started off and underway, green flag is out. And as you were talking about, Justin, already 2 wide through 1 and 2. We'll see this a lot throughout the course of the evening.
Absolutely. The third line could also get working, but you need a lot of drivers to be able to be willing to make that work. But some of these drivers looking to have a bit of fun. Keep in mind, these are some of the final positions being set here, we're hearing, for these competitors. So while they're fighting very aggressively here, this still needs to be taken somewhat seriously if you want to get somewhat decent pit box selection for this race.
I'll tell you what, I know this is just a personal thing for me. If I'm going to be in the back, I'd probably want the last pit stall, so I would even have incentive to just drop to the back and that's it. Just have the first pit stall. If you're going to be back there, you might as well make it easy on yourself and have the first one. But again, that's, of course, what I would go for. These drivers looking to improve their track position just a little bit. As we see a couple of moves to the outside here, the 666 machine of Wyatt Tinsley, he was the sponsor provisional for this race, so did not qualify his way in on time, but was able to get in by virtue of that provisional. You see Michael Frisch on your screen. He just didn't elect to pull a time in qualifying. Will Rogers, he won the pole in the knockout qualifying session that we had, but did not pull a time in this session. Dylan Smith, another driver who was able to qualify his way in through provisional and owner's points in that 00 car. We've seen Jake Poulin, for the most part, running in that machine. Tonight, Dylan Smith pilots it. Ryan Williams, same case for him. He was actually the 34th qualifier in knockout qualifying who made his way in. Jacob Fisher in on time, and so was Brett Pancari. So kind of a mix of drivers here who both qualified their way in on time, and a couple of provisionals as they're getting side by side. This is the last lap here as they work down the backstretch.
Will Rogers got some decent help. It's just a matter of, will that help prevail? Already 3 wide in the second row.
3 wide for row number 3 now as Ryan Williams moving and charging towards the high side. The number 28 has a little bit of drafting help from Jacob Fisher as they'll come across the tri-oval. Williams in the preferred position. Will Rogers down on the tri-oval on the apron, and Williams going to be able to hang on as he gets a slight bump from Michael Frisch, and Williams will win this quick 3-lap dash to get us started tonight.
And I think that shows a little bit of a preview of some of the desperation we'll see later on in the race for tonight, and what drivers are willing to do in terms of moves. But the interesting thing's going to be how the lines will form up. And we've seen a bit of hints for how some of those drivers will have that happen for tonight when you have a whole pack of cars running around this racetrack. It's going to be a fun night of racing, to say the very least. But it's going to be big in terms of teamwork for throughout this evening.
It is going to be very key, but the one thing that you noticed if you were watching our coverage last night is a little bit of a difference here when talking about this package, talking about the Xfinity cars. You're not seeing quite the separation that you saw in the Cup cars. That's because they don't have the updated aero package on here. You don't have that air bubble pushing that car out in front, and that allows the door-to-door and front bumper-to-front bumper racing that we're going to see all night tonight here at Talladega. And by the way, we'll bring in a special guest here for just a second, kind of get his thoughts on everything. We'll welcome in Blake Reynolds to the booth. Blake, you got a copy?
Yes, sir. Blake, how you doing?
We're doing pretty well, Blake, and you didn't make your way out to the track tonight, but how are things looking from the booth, and what do you think we're going to see tonight?
I think we're going to see a good race. FTF is full of super speedway ringers and just people who are talented at the craft, as you know.
Very much so. Now, who do you think, looking at the long list of drivers that we have in this race, you have a lot of FTF regulars, you have a lot of people who make their way out for these plate tracks that are awfully talented. Who do you have your eye on out of this field?
Well, I'm keeping my eye on my team car that I share with Brian Mercurio and Kyle Riley. Kyle Riley being in the 62 Speed Inc. Bar Visuals car tonight. Obviously, looking out for him, he's quite the... he likes to say he's good at this stuff, and I think he is too. Sean Butler and Jordan Worth, I believe, are also in the race. You got to watch out for those guys. Those guys are dangerous if they are in it at the end.
I think that'll certainly be the case. Well, Blake, we'll get back to you in a little bit, but we appreciate you hopping in and out, and I'm sure we'll talk to you more throughout the evening.
Sure thing. Thank you.
There's Blake Reynolds. And Justin, I'll kind of forward that same question to you on names that you think we got to watch out for. I know it's Talladega. Everybody has an opportunity here at this racetrack to go up and compete for the win. We see even what you could call a surprise in David Schildhouse sitting on the pole here tonight. But who are you looking at to potentially run up front and maybe even pull off an upset tonight?
I wouldn't say upset necessarily, but maybe drivers like Sean Butler, for example, we know is going to be very aggressive, be up at the front much of the race. I'm keeping my eye on him. Keeping my eye on drivers like Michael Cozy and Jordan Worf from the middle of the pack as well. They're both drivers that are known to be really successful when it comes to super speedway action and compete in a lot of super speedway races across the iRacing platform. But I'm keeping my eyes on Michael Frisch, and for obvious reasons. Michael Frisch is somebody that always, as talked about, finds his way to the front when it is points paying time and race win time in every big major event, and FTF especially. He's somebody that I wouldn't be surprised to see run in the back for about 50 laps, then find his way inside the top 10 within the final 10 laps or so of this race.
I definitely think that is something we could easily see Michael Frisch running up from the back. And, I'm going to point somebody out that, for one, I just don't think they get the credit that they deserve, not only in this type of competition, but what they've been able to do in pretty much every race that we've seen in FTF this year, whether they're competing in the Coke Series this year. It always seems like he flies under the radar, somebody that starts in the back, but is always one of the fastest cars on the racetrack and can certainly get it done on the plate tracks as well as not, and that is Michael Guest. I just think, especially what he's been able to do this season in the Coke Series with a lot of his starts in the back of the pack, how he's been able to move his way forward, get into the top 5 in points. And, even when we do a lot of these races, whether it's GNS or the Cup Series, we just never seem to talk about this guy throughout the broadcast, but he always finds a way to be in the mix at the end. So I'm going to look at the 054 machine tonight to potentially have, I wouldn't even say upset, because it's not really an upset for Michael Guest to go up there and win. But I think he certainly has the speed and capability to get it done, and, has some teammates out there as well. He's got Malik Ray just behind him. They'll be coming up through the back of the field. You actually have 3 straight drivers in a line, Guest, Justice, and Malik Ray, that are all eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series drivers. So believe that threesome could get hooked up pretty quick and make their way to the front early on.
Wouldn't be surprised if there's some of the drivers trying to get the third line working and quickly as well, based on some of the trends that we've seen from them in the past. So it's just a matter of, do they want to try and play it safe, or do they want to try and play it aggressive and charge their way through the pack? It's going to be the biggest questions for, I think, a lot of people's minds at this point. And keep in mind, a lot of the positioning with qualifying is critical for this reason here, the pit box selection. We've seen for the drivers in the final few positions, for example, going to be having the earliest pit box. That's going to mean they're going to be likely cutting to the inside during green flag pit stops, which is going to be intriguing for tonight on how the strategy plays on that one for tonight. But the rest of the drivers then in turn try and have to migrate their way through the right side of the pit lane. It's all an art for them, trying to find your pit box, and this is all crucial as well to make sure you know where your pit boxes are for tonight's race. So in other words, there's a lot of things to keep in mind for tonight. But the main thing is, can you survive the big one as well?
Can you survive that big one? And speaking of things that you have to think about, I know 76 laps seems like we will be good on fuel. We can go probably about, I know the NASCAR Cup Series machines around here can do about 35 laps. Believe there's a little bit better fuel mileage in these Xfinity cars with the lower RPMs that they run. So think we should be good to make it to the end on just one green flag stop. Again, that's assuming that we go green all the way, which we know the odds may not be very high, but Justin, we thought that last week that we would see a lot of cautions at South Boston when we visited there last Saturday night, and boy, did they surprise us with a race that I believe was only slowed by 2 caution flags. We went about the last 120 laps of the race green. So I know we have a lot of new faces out here tonight, but they instituted a brand new rec score, and they responded by having probably one of the cleanest races of the year. So who knows what we may be in store for tonight.
Absolutely. And the thing to mention as well is when you have a strong enough field and the right people, you can go green the whole entire way. And this is the type of race I feel that might potentially trend towards long runs, because a lot of the people in this field are used to running 3 wide, especially in RTP scenarios as well with Talladega with the trucks. Some of these drivers were among those drivers in massive packs 3 wide in their respective splits. And that takes a lot of talent to be able to do properly. We talked about a special skill set needed for the Cup package that's currently on the iRacing platform, for example. It takes a special skill set to be able to properly manage the lines and have the true patience, luck, and strategy all combined into one to race well here. And all of that also fares into how confident drivers are with one another for their lanes. So that's going to be something absolutely that's going to come up throughout the night. Keep in mind, if this was an official race, this would be a 4600 SOF, which would be one of the strongest SOFs that you can have. One of the stronger ones, I should rather say. It's a strong field of drivers. They can race clean. It's the matter of how things fare out for tonight once green flags fly across the track.
All very good points there, Justin, and how it all shakes out just largely depends on some of those factors that you talked about, having luck, strategy, and all form into one to put you in a position at the end to have an opportunity to win this race. Now, of course, this isn't the first time in this series that we have gone out to the plate tracks. We did start all the way back January 23rd at Daytona. Obviously, the season opener, it was Jake Poulin who won that race. 81 laps, 11 lead changes, 7 cautions that we had in that 81 lap race for 22 laps. So about a quarter of the race was spent under the yellow flag, and ended up being a case where we had some long green flag runs to start, and then towards the end, obviously, as the pay window got closer, things definitely got much more chaotic, and I'm sure that's something that we will likely see tonight. Well, 10-minute warm-up is now complete after qualifying and our 3-lap heat that we've gone through, and in just a couple of moments we'll grid them up and give you the starting lineup for tonight's Kicking the Tires 200 at Talladega. And as we mentioned before, this is Talladega. It's a bit of an opportunity for drivers that you may not always see at the front of the field to be there, and tonight it is David Schildhouse. Fastest time in qualifying goes to the driver of the number 20 Advanced GG Chevrolet. David Schildhouse will start on pole with Ben Horse to his outside in second. Evan Rice will start in the third, a strong start for him, as well as David Walsh in fourth. Justin Oblock, he'll roll off in the fifth starting position. Sixth will go to Sean Butler. Seventh is Tristan Hagenstein. Eighth will be Donovan Strauss. Jonathan Oates will start in ninth, and Nate Stewart rounds out the top 10.
Cosman Inishu will start at 11th position with Keith Sherman in 12th. Seth Noel will start in 13th, driving that 077 machine tonight with Sarche Mann in 14th spot. Tyler Gary will drive the Slipstream Creative Medium machine from 15th with Kyle Riley in 16th. Michael Cozy Jr. starts in 17th alongside Jordan Worth. 19th goes to Matt Horton with Brandon Hawkin rounding out the top 20. He'll be driving the 89 car with the lads of Lefty Carnation logos on the car tonight.
21st will be Jack Painter. 22nd is Mike McConville. Austin Johnson will start in 23rd. 24th goes to Ryan Naraki. Nathan Rabideau will roll off from 25th. 26th to Edwin Mendez. Matthew Zwack will start in 27th. 28th is Andrew Schwartz. 29th is Ethan Corder. And then Brian Mercurio did not pull a time in qualifying, but he'll start in 30th.
Guests will start 31st, Matt Danson 32nd, along with Derek Justice 33rd, Will Klein in the Nexus Esports Machine 34th, while Malik Ray will start 35th position. Ryan Williams will start 36th with Jacob Fisher in 37th. 38th goes to Michael Frisch, Dylan Smith in 39th. Wyatt Tinsley rounds out the top 40 positions.
Starting in 41st tonight will be Brett Pancari. 42nd is Will Rogers, and Aaron Smith will start in 43rd. For the drivers that made their way into the server that did make their way into qualifying. 41 drivers. We don't even have time to go through the entire list of drivers that were not able to make their way into this race. So an old D&Q list that might remind you of the 1997 Busch Series was likely the case for this race. As we take a look at our info for tonight, 78 degrees out here at Talladega, 91-degree track temperature with winds just to the northeast at 1 mile per hour, 56% relative humidity, and of course this weather standard for iRacing, and definitely won't create a condition where any of these drivers at any point will have to worry about tires aside from locking up and sliding them or doing something of that type of nature. But as they'll work off of the banking at this 2.66 mile facility, David Schildhaus will have control of the field as the pace car will move to the safety of pit road. The 20 and 333, your top two. As we get set to go too wide, David Schildhaus has all the room on this tri-oval to go whenever he pleases, but he may very well wait until Barney the flagman waves the green flag to get us underway, and do that he shall. Green flag is out, and we are ready to race 76 laps at Talladega.
And a well-executed launch up for much of the field here this time. But the thing is, looks like that top line isn't gathering enough speed quickly. It's going to take it to the back straightaway, though, for them to really sort things out. As Jordan Worth already one of the drivers sorting themselves up to the top.
And Jordan Worth, not sure if that's a move to try and go forward, and actually it looks like it's the reverse. He's going to go straight backward as he plummets his way through the field. Up front, though, you see nobody is being patient right now. David Schildhaus all over the back of Ben Horst, who was able to get control of the race lead. Schildhaus had the lead, had Evan Rice pushing him, but that 333 got a great launch as they worked off of 1 and 2, and he goes right to the front of the pack.
And we're expecting a lot of potential lead changes tonight with this package when it comes to the Xfinity Series cars. They can provide a lot of side-by-side racing, a lot of back and forth when it comes to some of these battles. And we've already seen what a couple different lines form up with a back and forth.
Right now, it's two lines at the front, and then for the most part, you see kind of a long line of cars there on the bottom that are, I believe, just kind of biding their time. It's early, and they're going to play the conservative strategy tonight, but it looks like about through our top 20 here at Talladega, look at how they go too wide. Nobody really being patient. Haven't seen that third line come into play just yet, but I don't think we're too far from potentially seeing that. But as they work through the tri-oval once again, it is still Horst, and it is David Walsh there on the outside trying to lead that second line with Sean Butler closely in tow.
Still have Donovan Strauss up there. Look, some drivers are already trying to get the third line to work. It's been talked about. You need multiple drivers to get that to work, though, as Kyle Riley ended up faking out the 15 machine and forcing him on his own. Keith Schulman shuffled to the back.
And just as quickly as we thought it would form, we see another driver poke there to the third lane. That is the 30 machine, or the 030 rather. But again, that is not an aggressive maneuver. That is a conservative maneuver. That is Donovan Strauss, who is allowing these guys to go by him. So Strauss falling back, perhaps wanting to play it a little bit safer here on what is only lap number 3 of 76 tonight. No stages here. The FTF Grand National Series presented by Bar Visuals. That's reserved for Sunday nights, which of course you can catch action of the FTF Cup Series tomorrow night, 8 p.m. Eastern, live on Bottom Split. But as they continue to work, Justin, it seems like it's a broken record, but about the first 10 rows here stacked up too wide, and right now we're not really getting a sense that one lane is better than the other.
And it's always where, when it comes to the Xfinity Series cars, as Walsh now takes the race lead, the top line is better. In particular, I mean the middle, down the straightaways, but the bottom line is better in the corners when it comes to these types of cars on iRacing. So it always a numbers game, where if you have better numbers on one line, that line is going to end up being the better line all throughout the corner. Right now, the numbers are high enough on that top line for drivers, if they choose, to potentially rotate in and out for the race lead. It's just a matter as one of the drivers on the bottom line, though, to be able to then get enough of a run to then come up to the top line and be able to control that line, because it's basically controlling the bubble using a rotating chair effect, where you're rotating that control of the pack.
That's how it sometimes cycles out here at Talladega, and I think you'll see this a lot, that the driver that leads that second line will get the lead. He'll clear himself down to the bottom, and we may see that cycle around a little bit. It's exactly what David Walsh was able to accomplish as he became our second leader of the race. And actually, Horst going to jump up to the outside, take advantage of the push from Sean Butler, who, you know, the other thing that we have to talk about here, Justin, the overheating in this Xfinity car is pretty substantial. It's very easy to overheat that engine. So I like moves like what we just saw from Ben Horst, where you jump up in front of a car that has had clean air the last couple of laps, because you know just by that count that they can be somebody that can push you for a pretty significant amount of time, because their temperatures are obviously very cool.
Absolutely. You have to definitely manage the temperatures and keep an eye on that gauge throughout the night. If you even lose track of it a little bit, it can be a deadly mistake in terms of the race. So you'll see drivers for a couple laps be able to push, then back off for about a half a car length or 3/4 to be able to try and cool off the engine throughout this evening. So it's that bit of the chess match that comes into play. As speaking of coming into play, here comes some of the super speedway known good drivers like Mike McConville and Michael Cozy on the top.
Well, McConville, one of our championship contenders just a night ago in the Saturday Night Super Speedway League, except it was actually run on Fridays. But Michael Cozy Jr. leading that third line. And you see that outside of that third line, if you have someone that's willing to work with you and push, I mean, we could see it is just 2 cars, maybe 3 if you want to count Mike McConville, who is slowly working his way up to the back of Austin Johnson. But you can see how much different this works, whereas last night it was all about numbers, how many people you could have to go with you. But tonight it's more the quality of the pusher that you have behind, because Austin Johnson and Cozy, they're just 2 cars right now, and they're about to try and take the race lead as they work into turn 1.
You still need numbers, though, for that third line to fully work with the Xfinity cars. At Talladega in particular, you need to have that 3+ total that they have right now. But 3 wide for the race lead. Can Cozy Jr. get fully clear is the question. How about another car or 2 joining the fray as several drivers try and draft their way up?
Several other joining the mix, but again, it is still that third line. But you see how quickly it dies out. Johnson was all over the back of Michael Cozy Jr. He did a number to shove Cozy up to the race lead, but now he's left out to dry, and McConville, the only other car that can push him, and McConville obviously pretty heated up after pushing the 38th out there. So that's one of those things. If you take advantage of the third line, if you don't have too many cars to be able to do it with, it's a line that can last, but not a very long time. As you see now, Cozy, who had the race lead, now Sean Butler will make his way up front in the Pennzoil Ford.
And it looks like Cozy Jr. wants to be able to control this race lead, though. Nate Stewart's been a really solid pusher so far. That third line is still coming back with a vengeance, though. So far with a bit of the side draft force, Mike McConville doing a great job pushing Johnson now to keep that momentum up. They need one more car, though, I think, to fully keep the track position.
I think you're right, and one guy that they may have that will help them in just a little bit, I would not be shocked to see Malik Ray make his way up to the top side. Malik Ray started near the back of this field, has already worked his way up into the top 5. 35th to 5th is Malik Ray, and we know that he's not going to be very patient. He wants to be out front every lap possible. He's already the 3rd car in line on the 2nd lane.
He has a lot of confidence when it comes to super speedway racing, even in the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing series, so it shouldn't be surprised to see him up towards the front. It's one of his strong suits as a driver. He's very competitive and very quick when it comes to managing the lines in super speedways, and he's not afraid to make very daring moves. And that's in part, I think, how he just found his way so quickly up here. But I want to give a shout out to the paint scheme right now for Nate Stewart. Debuted that paint scheme on the 13 machine during the RTP races on Thursday night. throwing back to one of the Dale Jr. paint schemes, in fact, at the moment in that number 13 machine. Designed by Victor Valley, who was among the DNQs for tonight.
And that is the case for Nate Stewart, paying homage with one of his throwback schemes, as now he went to the lead and now he'll fall back after leading a lap. So perhaps he just wanted the bonus points, or to say that he led at some point, or perhaps didn't like how it was shaking out up there at the front of the field. Nevertheless, Stewart will drop on back. He started up front, and it may not be too long before we see him up here once again. But Sean Butler now cycles back to the race lead, and this is what we're largely going to talk about throughout the night, Justin, that it's going to be the same 4 or 5 names that we'll talk about. And it seems early on, Ben Horst, Sean Butler, Michael Cozy, those will be the names that I think we're going to be saying a lot tonight. And we already talked about Malik Ray. He may want to make his name a part of that. He's now leading that third line on the outside.
And has some drivers willing to help him out. Tyler Gary among them, Michael Guest willing to help. Justin Noblock as well is going to be someone that's going to be very helpful in the Space Station Racing machine. All those drivers are confident drivers that like to work together for the most part. So now this is exactly what Ray wants to see. The question is, can he get himself fully clear yet? No. That middle line still has a lot of pushing and shoving being done by Schulthouse to keep it forward.
And that middle lane has really had the numbers here early on. I know we've had about 4 or 5 cars usually on the bottom, but the middle lane has outnumbered both the middle, or both the low and the high side, as now David Schildhouse will jump up in front of Malik Ray. So 3 wide for about the first 6 rows in this race. Mind you, this is lap 13 of 76, so still a long way to go. But these drivers, they want to be up front. They think the wreck may happen behind them, or they just want to be a factor up here and have us talk about them on the broadcast. 3 wide, Schildhouse falling back to that second row, and Donovan Strauss, who exited the pack just a little while ago, he's now the second car in that middle lane.
Yeah, young Donovan Strauss with ESC having a stellar campaign in RTP as well. Has been able to survive some rough incidents in still a solid position. And hearing Strauss maybe starting to overheat a little bit, wanted Riley to come down there, but Riley couldn't get fully clear, I don't think, of Cozy Jr.
And I think you see that right there, Strauss backing off. Now he'll have a little bit of clean air to put on the nose of that machine to cool down that Ford Mustang as he goes by David Schildhouse, who's fading very quickly there on the high side. Malik Ray backing off, and Schildhouse, that third lane has just all of a sudden completely fallen apart. Everybody abandoning Schildhouse there. So as David looked to go to the race lead, he'll fall back in line in the second lane. And, you know, that's what we're going to largely see here. That third lane, it's going to come into play, but we've seen it already 2 or 3 times tonight that it forms up, you gain a couple spots, and eventually it just runs out of steam. I think that's a lot of what we'll see tonight.
I think in part as well, everyone just has to reset, get their temperatures back in order. They're already peaking fairly well, so we'll have to see if that third line comes back in a little while. Keep in mind, we're already 14, 15 laps in this time by, and what's been an impressive race so far. Eventually, drivers are going to have to start thinking about the fuel mileage. It isn't going to be too much of a factor for the front cars since they keep on swapping back and forth, but it's still going to be interesting on what lap they end up having to come down.
It will, and the type of strategy, you have a lot of teammates, when we've seen here at FTF, a lot of team-coordinated strategy become part of races. Is going to the race lead, ducking down to the bottom of the racetrack is Donovan Strauss, who now holds firm over the race lead. Malik Ray will reform up once again. He goes to the top side, and now he wants a crack at the first spot. Malik Ray to the top side. He's got Austin Johnson to his inside. They are 2 wide for the lead, 3 rows behind them. And then here comes Malik Ray. He may have clear the lead, and he does, as he just clears Austin Johnson. Maybe no, he'll get shuffled back to the middle.
As expected, those drivers were all just trying to reset and recharge themselves for that opportunity. But the question is, did they all spurt it out too quickly with Malik Ray? I think possibly now, as a bad bump there. Johnson with a massive save on the bottom. Wow.
And he nearly went up into the middle line and completely would have ripped this pack apart had he turned across the nose just a little bit further, made a little bit more contact there with Donovan Strauss. So a big save from the pist setup shot machine keeps us under green here at Talladega. And what I was going to mention about a lap ago, that it's really just about the top 20 that we see battling up here. There is a long line of single file cars that are here on the bottom side. Wyatt Tinsley on back, 18th on back, are pretty much in a single file line. They're all just waiting back here, biding their time, and they're looking up here. They're liking what they see because they may see smoke here in a second from their vantage point.
Yeah, right now they're in a spot where it's just a patient game, to say the very least. These are the drivers who like to be in front of the incidents. There's a way of describing where you want to be at a super speedway. Do you want to be at the front and potentially be in front of trouble? Or do you want to be in the back and be behind it and have time to respond in turn? So there's two different philosophies, and for these drivers up at the front, their philosophy is, if I get in trouble, so be it. Yes, it'd be huge for the points. Yes, my car would likely be demolished, but it's where I feel more comfortable as a driver. For the drivers in the back, they feel more comfortable being okay and waiting until these drivers sort themselves out. So it's two different mindsets all coming into play here from the front to the back. And you can tell the mindset is definitely linked up at this point between Gary, Guest, Alon at this point with No Block, where they're all in sync, wanting to utilize that third line.
They're wanting to use that third line, and the one point I think you bring up is points, is that a lot of these drivers obviously are contending for the championship here in the FTF Grand National Series presented by Bar Visuals, but there is a pretty significant number of drivers in this field as well where they're not competing for that championship. They're just out here for fun, to perhaps just kind of play around here at Talladega, and of course maybe get prepared for the FTF Cup Series race at Talladega tomorrow evening. So I think a lot of these drivers, particularly a lot of the names we see up front, Michael Guest, Malik Gray, Donovan Strauss, not full-timers, especially in this series, so they're just out here trying to win another race, and I think that's going to play into a lot of the aggressive moves we see. Is now it's Tyler Gary in his 026 Toyota. He has control of the field on the bottom line, but here comes Austin Johnson again, and that's going to force Justin Knobloch up out wide.
And to add to your conversation, to be quite frank, some drivers, they enjoy racing three wide, battling wheel to wheel, tire to tire, fender to fender. And that's where we get a lot of the shuffling and back and forth, where they enjoy going back and forth with the runs like this. For some, it's more about the finishing position and the end of the race that they enjoy the most. So it's two different mindsets in that regard also coming into play. But Austin Johnson, keep in mind, does have back damage that is going to hamper him for much of the rest of this race here. That is going to make it hard for drivers to push him. That was from some of the contact a couple laps ago with Riley, I believe.
We do know that any amount of damage, especially in these Xfinity cars, is not something that you want to carry with you throughout the race. Any amount of damage, even here at these super speedways, tends to obviously not help you, and it may hurt you more in these cars more than any other on the service. But we have completed 20 laps here, all under the green flag tonight at Talladega Super Speedway. As we work lap number 21, we're getting close to about a third of the way through this one, and it has been led by about a handful of drivers, Donovan Strauss being one of them. And, you know, I hope not to jinx him, but my pick, Michael Guest, starting to flex his muscles here. He wants to try to take a crack at it, go to the front of the field.
And he has the help that's willing to work with him. We talked about Knobloch. We talked about Ray, for example. David Schildhouse is up there. Butler's been willing to work with him. He's got the help to do it. It's just a matter of, can they build up the timing of the run? Because Donovan Strauss has a good pusher in behind with Austin Johnson that's not willing to give up at the moment. It's going to come down to the temperatures, I think, for if Guest can fully clear and fully take the point. He did get the lead lap, though. That's the bright side.
He did. 31st to first, one of our hard chargers through the field to join the likes of Austin Johnson, Malik Ray, just a couple of names that have worked their way from the back to the front. Even Wyatt Tinsley has worked his way up to 16th. He started all the way in the 40th position. And, one name I'm surprised we haven't talked about a lot is Derek Justice. I know he's perhaps being a little bit conservative. He's back here in the 27th position, single file, just biding his time. But even he's somebody that doesn't often deploy this conservative strategy. Usually here at the plate tracks, he likes to be a part of things from the very outset, and perhaps taking a little bit of a different approach tonight is Derek Justice in the Baskin-Robbins Toyota.
You have to wonder if fuel mileage may be part of the thought process. He's among the drivers going on.
Oh, trouble! One car hardened in the wall. David Schildhouse is involved. Sean Butler, Donovan Strauss. Not exactly sure where it originated, but it was somewhere in the middle of this lead pack. And, Derek proves us right. That's exactly why he didn't want to be there. Malik Ray got turned there. Perhaps Jordan Worth maybe got some contact. But nevertheless, caution is out on lap 21, first time tonight.
And an interesting sequence where I think they moved down to the second line the same time Tyler Gary tried to move up to the second line. And I think that's what started to trigger things up. Just a tiny bit of a tap on Knobloch, got Knobloch loose, and that checked everybody up in the second line. Take a look. There's the move from Gary. At the same time, everyone else moves down to the second line, and then calamity.
That's exactly the case. It was just a bump, perhaps gone awry, and what looked like it was almost a four-wide move for the race lead as Knobloch went to push Michael Guest. Maybe he saw Tyler Gary there, thinks he reacted to that. He got a little squirrely. Malik Ray checked up for that. And unfortunately, he was already looking about four wide there when he checked up. Danson and Walsh, not a whole lot of room to go for there. And there is some heavy damage, some crippling damage from many of our competitors. Justin Knobloch obviously hard in the outside retaining wall. So was Michael Cozy. Jordan Worth got some damage in that. Donovan Strauss, Sean Butler, David Schildhouse got hit there. He was an innocent bystander in that one. Brandon Hawken was as well. So about 10 cars that really had nowhere to go. Mike McConville, one of our championship contenders last night, is involved in that one as well. And so that is... there's a fair amount of cars here that early on are going to have some damage. No fast repairs to speak of either, so they got to try to fix all the damage that they got.
Yeah, this is going to really change the complexion of how the front of the field is going to be. A lot of drivers who are contenders getting significant damage, like Michael Cozy Jr., Knobloch, Strauss, Worth, Ray, McConville, Strauss, or rather Schildhouse, rather. So everyone else is expected, though, coming in to get some fuel into the tank here. It's still one stopper to the end, but the strategy is now going to come into play possibly if it goes green.
No, it certainly is at this rate. When you want to pit, if you want to go long, if you want to go short, if you want to try and split this last run in the middle, it's going to be interesting to see with the amount of drivers that we see that are exiting this race, some significant damage for many of these competitors, and they're already going to call it a night. David Schildhouse has gone behind the wall. Mike McConville has disconnected from the server. So has Michael Cozy Jr., Malik Ray, Jordan Worth, Donovan Strauss. So roughly any driver, there wasn't a lot of terminal damage that I saw, but there certainly would have been enough that it would have been very difficult, if not impossible, for some of those drivers, even if they worked on that car to try to get it repaired as much as possible, that it would be really hard for them to finish the race or even keep up in the pack. So many of those drivers just going to go ahead and call it a night here.
Yeah, and keep in mind some of the drivers that were expecting contenders like Butler, significant damage, Evan Rice completely crunched inside. This is going to be where you want to be at the back for a reason. Well, they just got their reason. And now it's a matter of, will we see some of these drivers now migrate their way to the front or stay in the back and wait until we get to the green flag pit stop window in about 12, 14 laps before they start going?
We'll see that unfold as we work under the first caution flag of the evening here at Talladega Super Speedway. As we pace around under caution, we'll go side by side as we continue our coverage of the Kick in the Tires 200 here at Talladega.
iRacing is a sim racing game that combines a true-to-life racing experience with an online community of virtual racers from all around the globe. iRacing offers a multitude of officially licensed cars and tracks, laser scanned with millimeter accuracy. Their car models and mechanical systems are based on real-world physics, engineered in cooperation with manufacturers and race teams. Their skill license system ranges from rookie to pro, ensuring members are always pitted against those with similar skill sets. Members are able to sign up for a weekly race series, compete in time trials, host a private race with friends, and participate in racing leagues created and run by the community. With over 170,000 members, iRacing works in partnership with renowned motorsports organizations like NASCAR to deliver virtual races based on the real-life NASCAR Cup Series, as well as many other series on the NASCAR ladder. iRacing also features team racing, providing a variety of options for members to create and manage their own teams. Race with friends or real-world teammates in full-length endurance events like the 24 Hours of Daytona, Spa 24, or the Bathurst 12 Hour. Additional partners include IMSA, World of Outlaws, Supercars, and IndyCar, allowing members to race in their very own Indianapolis 500, Bathurst 1000, Chili Bowl, and many more iconic events. This is iRacing, delivering the most authentic racing experience short of getting into a real race car. Sign up today at iRacing.com.
And back with you here with live flag-to-flag coverage of the FTF Grand National Series presented by Bar Visuals as we work around here for round number 10 of this series as we have already moved forward to Talladega Super Speedway and kind of that middle portion of the year before we get into the summer months. Got a lot of great tracks upcoming. Iowa is up next. We go to the Daytona Road Course, Dover, Circuit of the Americas. That's you know, I've been putting some laps on that track just trying to figure out which way is left and which way is right, but we're eventually getting there. As pace car will pull to pit road once again. This time it is Austin Johnson for a first restart of the night. He'll get us rolling off from the fast iRacing Setup Shop Chevrolet. Pace car pulls off and wait for Barney the Flagman to put us back under the green, as many of these leaders do at Talladega. And not a whole lot of help there for Johnson. It looks like Walsh may have the better help from Ryan Doucette as they work into turn one.
And it looks like Michael Cozy Jr. is elected to come back on the racetrack at the very least and gain some spots. He is a couple laps down, but still, points are points. Especially in this type of race. You never know here at Talladega as they start to shuffle around and some of the drivers try and sort themselves out. A bit of a sandwich building up on the bottom.
They are stacking up there on the bottom side of the racetrack, and Walsh will go down there to defend the race lead. And so Walsh takes control in that 37 Ford, but here comes the Zoopals machine. Ryan Doucette has a little bit of help behind him. Tyler Gary, who has led a couple of laps tonight, they get a big run here as they work to the Tri-Oval. A little bit of help behind them from Ryan Naraki as well. So that bottom line still strung out, and you know, Justin, I think this is a situation where we have a lot of our top contenders tonight already behind the wall. They're already out of this race, and many of these names, Doucette, Naraki, many of these others, they're the ones who were back there single file. They were being conservative. I think that's why this lead pack is only about 7 or 8 cars. You don't see a lot of jockeying for position. I still think that this early on in the race, everybody's still thinking in the back of their mind, I want to try to get to the end of this thing. And oh, by the way, there is still what you mentioned about fuel mileage perhaps coming into play as well.
Yeah, all this is going to factor in where The mileage is definitely in the back of everybody's minds, thinking, okay, do we try and split this run in half? Do we try and pit as soon as the window opens and try and get away from the rest of the pack and get a grouping of cars together? Do we try and go all the way to the end of the fuel tank? All those things factor in. By the way, that's Seth Noel in the race lead. Either way, subbing in for Doucette, and he's done a very solid job so far in that 077.
Yeah, that's my bad there on the misidentification. You finally you learn some of these paint schemes and you identify it with the driver, and I just saw Zupals and Ryan Doucette came to my mind. So apologies to Seth Noel, who in his own right has made his way up here, much like we would see Ryan Doucette likely do in this series. As you see Walsh all over the back of him, they are single file for about the first 4 rows, and we're seeing a lot of single files sort out here, but one car jumping out of line. He was the 5th car in line. It was Wyatt Tinsley, who now has a pretty good move here going, and he's going to go to the outside 3 wide on Austin Johnson, and Tyler Gary says, thank you very much. I'll just hang you out to dry.
And the interesting thing with Tinsley's paint scheme is I think that's a cat on his hood, and he's getting taken 4 wide with that cat.
4 wide for just a moment, as we thought things had settled down, or at least we're going to look that way for a little bit, but they have not. Now they're 3 wide all the way through the front pack. Seth Noel blinking a little bit there, but his connection has stabilized. Frisch now leading the top side. Will Rogers behind him. And another opportunity here for the top line with 2 cars to try and make up some ground.
And keep in mind, they're going to have to deal with lap traffic eventually. Michael Cozy Jr. is currently a quarter of the racetrack ahead from this pack. So that's going to make things fairly interesting for when they reach him with this 3 wide. And that's going to be the tough part. When you're navigating traffic, normally you want the traffic to pick a lane and then you sort yourselves out. Usually in 3 wide, you try and get yourself 2 wide. There's not really the space to do that right now when they get to Cozy Jr.
No, there isn't. There just isn't any room anywhere right now. They are still stacked up 3 by 3 by 3 for the first 3 rows. Noel on the bottom, Johnson in the middle. You see the momentum that high line loses as they work off of the corner, but you see them surge back down the straightaway as each line pretty even, and what's going to kill your line is what Tyler Gary just did to Austin Johnson. Johnson falls back. Gary gets the push now from Frisch, who, mind you, has a clean engine or a clean air on the nose of that machine for the last couple of laps. So he gives Gary a good push and will shove Gary out to the lead as they exit turn 2.
Here to get clear is the big thing in the Moonsport machine. I think he might actually do so. And normally we see Frisch towards the back at this point, but with the race having so much trouble for some of the main contenders, that's changed as they start to have a bit of fanning out to the apron.
Gary trying to control the lanes, got a little bit loose and is now stuck in the middle. He's got Michael Guest to pick him back up and try to move forward a couple of spots, but there are 2 cars in the middle, and it's kind of the sucker hole, honestly, there in the middle with 4 cars on the outside, about 5 or 4 cars on the inside, 4 cars on the very top line, and just 2 with the tandem with Michael Guest. But it's working out for Tyler Gary. A great push there that he got from Michael Guest to try and stay competitive in that second lane.
And keep in mind, some of these drivers have migrated a long way forward, and this is one of the main things here at Super Speedway Racing you can do is, especially here on iRacing, Will Rogers 42nd to 6th. And Rogers has been looking like he's been wanting to go for a little bit of a while or so here in the Space Station Racing Machine. Of course, has done a lot of work across the iRacing platform in sim racing in the past year plus, as well as competed fairly sportively in a lot of FTF races. Looking very sporty here tonight, and looks like he may get a bit of help here and there from some of these drivers.
Well, Rogers was one of those drivers that took things a little bit easier in our opening laps, and here on lap 34, I think he's showing that he's certainly going to be a contender here to play with tonight. Of course, the former Monday Night Racing champion of this latest season, and that'll get going up here in just a little bit. But now, up front, we've mostly worked just double file right now, no third line to speak of. About 5 rows deep for your top 10, and then, of course, much like we saw at the beginning of this race, a long line of single file cars working their way on the bottom. And Justin, it's pretty simple. They just want to be there at the end, and obviously with green flag pit stops on the horizon, that's where really your money is made in these races. You can get all the track position you want. You can be up front. But at a super speedway, the one thing that will really separate the haves from the have-nots is to get on and off a pit road quickly.
Absolutely. And we talked about this during the warm-up for tonight, where pit box selection and pit box awareness are going to be very critical as well on where these drivers enter the pit lane. Some drivers will take it hard to the inside as a result of having the early stalls so they can execute and gain as much time as possible. Other drivers are going to have to take the right side or the outside line and try and get it charged just inside that commitment cone and before the grass, because they may be in the middle of the pit lane or right at the very tail end of the lane. So all that is definitely where you need to be aware of all of that, and that's why in the warm-up you take that time to figure out, okay, where do I need to stop to know what I have to do for the pit stops. And that is all in turn, communication is going to be key for how this plays out for among the drivers.
It is when you want to get on the pit road, what lane you want to be. We've seen time and time again in the iRacing service or even in real life that pitting from the middle line is not something that you want to do. So getting down to the bottom off of turn 4, and then of course you have more than likely what will be about 10, 15 cars potentially around you that are all going to be trying to make their way on the pit road at the same time. So a lot that you got to be aware of, and then of course get down low, get your pit stop, and of course don't slide through your box. A lot of things that you have to do. And you know, Justin, I'm one of those drivers that thinks there's not a lot of time to gain getting on the pit road at a super speedway. Of course you can get in a little faster than another driver, and perhaps you can get out of your pit stall a little bit quicker, but there's a lot more to lose in my mind than there is to gain. So I'm usually somebody that at the very least, I'm not going to speed or make sure I don't make a mistake, even if it's going to cost you a little time. Because even if you lose a little bit of track position, it's Talladega. You got 20 laps to make it back up.
Well, I did that with RTP and lost 7 spots every time we entered the pit lane under green. So that's where a lot of drivers need to practice it to be able to know the limitations. Because you do it too late, you're slamming into somebody, or you're slamming into the grass, or you're slamming into the commitment cone, or you're speeding as you end up just avoiding slamming into somebody. You do it too early, you get slammed into, or you end up losing all those spots. With this package, it's not the biggest worry, yes, but it's still something that could fare out on how you attack the rest of the race with the entry, and that's why, especially at the NASCAR level, they spend so much time practicing pit stop entry to know where they can break the deepest without speeding or getting into somebody.
It's very important, as you see, that may be on some drivers' minds, as we have 2 cars that are stuck on the top, and that's about it. Everybody else getting single file here on the bottom side of the racetrack. And with that, we'll bring in our guest analyst, Blake Reynolds, back into the booth once again. Blake, we're getting up to the halfway point, or just past it, rather. What have you seen so far tonight that has stuck out to you?
Well, before the big one, I was surprised at how aggressive everyone was racing. Then again, it's FTF and it's iRacing. The aggression tends to be there every week. But they've really calmed down. I'm actually kind of impressed here that everyone's just kind of calming out, I guess, waiting for the fuel to come in. I'm not sure what exact strategies everyone's going to do, but they're just vibing right now, Blake.
They are, certainly, but, I'll throw it to you as well. We spent a lot of time talking about pit road strategy. What's kind of your mindset when you're going through this run, fuel, or at least getting onto pit road is your focus? How do you try and approach that to try and kind of maximize your time that you're on pit road?
Well, usually I try to stay out as long as possible. Usually, if you break up that momentum at all, and you pit with, any lower amount of cars, you're probably going to be slower than that main pack that's still out there, even by 1 or 2 laps. So, unless the main pack of cars pits early, I don't see anyone, pitting early. I think we're going to see them stretch it as far as possible on this run.
Also, I'm going to ask you another question, maybe out of left field. You liking what you see out of McLaren right now? I mean, Lando Norris, Daniel Ricciardo, they've had pretty decent start to the F1 season. How are you liking them so far?
Now you're speaking my language. I am loving McLaren. Preseason testing, they came out, they had some differences on their car. People didn't expect, as there's contact between Kyle Riley and Tyler Gary. Yeah, but, Lando is absolutely sending it this season, and Daniel's still getting used to the car. But he will absolutely be there, and I think there's going to be an absolute fight for P3 in the F1 constructors between McLaren and Ferrari.
We may see that, and by the way, I bring up F1. How about FTF1 that will be coming up? I know I saw your name signed up for the league. Are you going to be running some races in there?
Yes, sir. We're running all 6, I believe. I believe there's 6 tracks, but there's 9 races. We're doing some double headers, so...
dang, there goes my chances to win.
Hey, it's all good. It's all good. Look, it's a new car. Not a lot of people have raced it. I haven't even raced it that much, but I am looking forward to the challenge. I've signed up Scuderia Viola. That is my FTF Cup Series team. I've signed up with Sean M. Butler as my teammate. We're going to teach him how to do some road racing, and we're going to have some nice, beautiful paint schemes, which I guess I'm telling Cosman right now, hey, I'm about to ask you to paint these schemes, so... I will message you after if he's watching.
Well, hopefully you don't get that message in before I have to send mine in, because I'm also getting him to make my paint scheme as well. But
let's be honest, he's doing everyone's. Oh, we got pitters. Michael P. Frisch.
He is. Well, we'll let you go here, Blake. Good timing right there, and thanks for stepping in once again.
No problem.
Oh, no, and we have trouble on pit road. Michael Frisch doing a full 360 as he's pulling a Brad Keselowski, or at least he's trying to. He's backwards in his pit stall, but it doesn't look like they're pitting him. He's going to have to spin around. That's a stubborn pit crew right there.
Oh, and that is absolutely huge. He absolutely sent it way too deep, I think, on that entry in the first place. He was speeding in the first place, even before he spun it around. Just, you cannot afford to do that at this point of the race. This is likely going to cost him a lap.
You hate to see it for Michael Frisch, whose gas man just really said, you know what, I really don't want to pit that car. I don't want to have to walk more than 3 steps to be able to fuel that race car. So, unfortunately for Frisch, not only did he spin, I think he also suffered a pit road speeding penalty. So that's going to be about another 40 or so seconds that he's going to be stuck on pit road. Jacob Fisher as well, another driver that made their way down pit road with that group, has stayed on pit road here. And actually, no, he's 18 laps down. What am I saying? So he did not pit with that group. But out off of pit road, it looks like that's going to hurt that pack of cars that came down, not having Michael Frisch. You only have a handful or so now that are going to try to do what we saw North Force Racing do in the Pro Series at Daytona. Have a group of cars, about 5 or 6 that can work together. And the plan here is, Justin, if you work together and you push each other, you're not side by side, the thought is that maybe you could be faster than a lead pack who's jockeying for position, battling with each other. But right now, when you lose a couple of your comrades down pit road, you're not exactly making up that time. You're losing some if anybody has a mistake, and unfortunately they did right there.
Yeah, that is why you just cannot afford those types of mistakes, and it's only going to be time will tell if the speed's going to be fast enough for what they're targeting in that second pack. They, I think, might pick up Michael Frisch. I'm not quite sure, but it's still going to hurt them, I think, overall. It's only going to be telling when we come across the stripe and we start seeing the laps click on when they're running single file compared to these drivers.
Let's see that last time by. That pack ran a 50.566 compared to Austin Johnson up front, who ran a 50.618 this time by for Johnson, 50.447. So a little bit of fluctuation with this pack, but they're not really losing time, but they're not really gaining any time either. And I just feel like having the numbers in this big pack, if you're not gaining time, it's a tough thing to do. But of course, now this entire pack here that did come down pit road, Ryan Williams, Nate Stewart, Brian Mercurio, Will Rogers, Tristan Hagenstein, who's caught up to it. If they get a caution right here, well, guess what? They cycle back through to the lead because they're not a lap down. So they're in a good position if they get a yellow, but right now, everybody in the lead single file, so the odds of that happening are very, very low.
Yeah, right now everyone's just focused on one thing, making sure they're in line to be able to properly get into the pit lane, most part. But this also leaves the opportunity for people to charge up on the second line, and that's starting to happen because Seth Noel wants to go with Matthew Zwack. And how about Matt Danson? We haven't mentioned him all race. He's been in the back much of the day. He's now moving his way up as the third car on the second line. And when you have these trains like this in the bottom and you get the second line starting to roll, you can gain a ton of positions if you do it right.
If you do it right, of course, it can work. And then, of course, there's the flip side. If you don't execute it, it's not going to work exactly in your favor. We'll see this time again. We started this run, if I can look all the way back, lap 27 was the first lap of this run, and you're looking at about 40 some odd laps. Anywhere between 40 and 42 is really the maximum fuel window for these race cars. So they still have a little ways to go before they would potentially have to come down to pit road, but they're not in a position where they're going to be able to make it to the end. There's just no way that you can afford to save 3, 4, 5 laps here at Talladega. It's just not possible to keep up with the pack and be able to accomplish that.
I agree with you, absolutely. It's just a matter, again, of keeping things coordinated properly as now everyone wants to start to go. And at this point, it gets interesting where we might see a couple drivers elect to split up the run in half in a couple laps or so, but I think based on what we're seeing, these drivers might try and run it all the way as long as they can and then short fuel it. Just take maybe about a tank of fuel, or not a full tank, rather a can of fuel, maybe 2 tires, go from there if they can, to be, say, 12 gallons or 10 gallons, something around those ranges is at least what it's looking like at this point if they go all the way to the end of the run.
They could do that, and of course you have to think that other pack that came down pit road, they would have done the same because they pit so early. They would have not had to have wasted a lot of time to fill up the entire 18.7 gallons that these cars can handle. So with 28 laps to go here at Talladega, Michael Guest will cross the stripe this next time by to make it 27. We are still racing here at Talladega. Guest and Gary, your top 2. And back with you here for the FTF Grand National Series presented by Bar Visuals. Blake McCandless, Justin Prince, and Blake Reynolds in the booth with you tonight. And a very exciting race that we've seen, but the business is picking up at the front of the field. 2x2 for about 10 rows. We saw everybody get single file here, Justin, for a little bit. But as we perhaps get closer to green flag pit stops, rather than settling out, they're wanting that track position. They're trying to get to the front. Blake, they're starting to get aggressive here.
I do see that. Tyler Gary is trying to pull this top line along, and Michael Guest is just holding it. He's holding it like a strong Austin Johnson behind him, and Brandon Hawken, and a new paint scheme, new sponsor. I believe Carnation logos on that race car tonight.
Very nice to see the new paint schemes that always come out. A lot of great schemes out here. I'm a big fan of the 38 scheme that we have out there tonight. The fast iRacing setup shot machine, otherwise known as PISS. They do some great work. Get that left front packer up. Yeah, that's what I was saying. Get that left front packer in, ladies and gentlemen. You can only get it there. We got a couple of folks. We were talking about Derek Justice wasn't necessarily in the conversation early on in this race, but later in the going, he's starting to become a factor in things. He's moved his way up to 10th and trying to make that outside line work.
Yeah, he's just trying to stay part of this front pack, and you can see this is the area I like to be in, usually on the bottom right behind this double. So a lot of times it's 3 wide, sometimes it's double wide. Right about where Aaron Smith and Evan Rice are right now. I like to be right in that area, right behind where they're actually racing, side by side. It's just a nice, comfortable spot. If the wreck habit's right in front of you, you're the first guy to it. You can kind of control your destiny and hope for some non-ARCA breakers to oblige your rear end.
Well, I was about to ask that, Justin, because I'm kind of in the same boat. I like to be, if you are kind of playing that conservative strategy, that you're caught up to the lead pack, but you're not far behind. But as Blake was saying there, you're kind of relying on the folks behind you not to run you over at that point if you're kind of in the mid part of the field.
Yeah, I'm someone who, if I want to play conservative, I try and run to the bottom line, absolutely, towards that middle portion of the field as well. But it's just the tough part as well of absolutely being worried if you come in a pit that you end up getting hit from behind. So it's something to definitely manage. It's something where it takes a lot of experience again to be able to properly do it without getting yourself hit from behind. So absolutely is something where you need it to be well executed. So to answer your question, I'm someone who likes to be in, if I'm playing conservative at this point, middle of the pack right now. Try and run middle of the line, try and figure and sort things out.
That's where we like to run. Of course, you have something that is really shooken up this race, that pack of cars that elected to come down pit road. The last few times I've seen the lap charts, they have been gaining ground on this lead pack. And, you know, Blake, this is interesting because if they continue to make up ground, they're going to come out well ahead of that other pack, assuming that we stay green here to the end.
Yeah, I'm really surprised by their momentum. They don't have very many cars, only 7 in this pack, and Michael Frisch only appears to just be catching up to the tail end of it. A lot of smart racers in this pack. You have Nate Stewart leading it, Brian Mercurio, Keith Sherman, Will Rogers, Brian Williams, Tristan Hagestein, and, like I said earlier, Michael Frisch on the back end of that little train there. But they are making a ton of time. You know, but like I said, a bunch of smart racers. I'm really not surprised to see this group excelling in the strat.
I'm not either with the quality of racers that they have. And, of course, Justin, if the caution were to come out, well, guess what? They're going to be able to stay out under that yellow and gain all the track position back, and they'll find themselves up front with under 20 laps to go. So either way, I'm really liking it. I wasn't initially a big fan of them making that move because I remember all the way back at the Pro Series opener at Daytona, or I guess the Contender Series now as it's so called, North Force Racing attempted to do this exact thing where they pulled about 6 or 7 drivers down, but they were slower than the overall pack. This group, they're a little bit quicker, so I really like the position they're in now.
Yeah, it took a little bit of a while for them to get fully sorted, but they're coordinated when it comes to that next group. Compare that to the front where everyone's just running side by side and trying to essentially pull each other back a little bit. There's 2 different philosophies, and with this hard racing up front, this is what's going to help them a little bit. It's just a matter of where they cycle through. Since they're running 50.7s right now with the side-by-side, this pack ran 50.8s last time by in down the back straightaway right now.
So they've since evened out, so at the very least they're not losing time, which in some ways, I guess, again, with the fact that you shortcut it and you could eventually get the race lead, I would have to say that that's an advantageous position to be in. But we look to the front of the lead pack as it stands right now. Michael Guest on the inside. He has control of the race lead. Tyler Gary leading that outside line. We haven't seen 3 wide for a little while, and I don't think we really have the numbers up here racing hard at the front of the pack to get that going. And just as quickly as we say that, here comes Seth Noel. Great push here to Tyler Gary as they race side by side for the lead into 1.
And good bit of momentum starting to build up once more here. And this point, Blake, what's kind of going through your mind, in your opinion, on how things fare out with this type of racing? You know, you're about to pit, but they're also trying to gain track position on that second line and eventually going to have to merge back in.
Or talking to me.
Yes.
You know, it's a struggle with 2 Blakes in here.
Talking to both of us.
Yeah, so, you know, like I said, I try to be on that bottom lane for most of the run. I'm not really too aggressive of a plate racer. If someone's, you know, if I'm partnered with, you know, I'm teammates with Malik Ray. If I'm ever partnered with Malik, I'm going to be that aggressor. I can kind of, you know, play a role, so to say, like an actor. But, you know, in actuality, I'm more of a conservative plate racer. I sit right in that bottom, and I just make sure, like, you know, if I know I'm pitting in 10 laps, I'm going to be on the bottom. I'm not going to move at all. I'm not going to leave it to the last 2 laps or anything like that. I just kind of, you know, sit where I am and hope it plays out. And then I kind of settle where I'm going to finish at the end of the race on that last run, maybe 10 to go, not even off of my pit strategy.
Now, Blake, I'm also curious, and I'll ask you this question. I know we've had the new implementation of the Cup package, and I kind of want to get your thoughts on it. I know it's not what we're running out here tonight, but the thought is that will eventually, that Aero package will be moved to pretty much all top 3 of the NASCAR Series cars, and I just kind of wanted to get your thoughts on it because obviously it's Talladega, it's Daytona. We're going to see side by side. We're going to see battling for the lead, but obviously from the driver's seat, they drive quite differently, and you know there's a lot of mixed opinions about it, but I for one love it, but I just want to get your thoughts on it.
I like it too. It really seems to be an acquired taste. A lot of the top sim racers that, you know, were really good at the previous package don't seem to like it, but then there's, you know, just a few, it seems, of those people that like the old package that like this new one, and then there's a whole bunch of people that used to hate plate racing that I know that just seem to like it. I, for one, really like it. You know, people just need to learn, you know, to get the tandem to work. You got to back up to the person behind you, and, you know, you got to understand how the bubble can work and how fast a car can come up to your back bumper, and, you know, how much of a launch can that bubble get you. People just need to, you know, do a lot of races, a lot of laps on it to really figure it out. The Cup car, you know, it has a lot of suck up to the back bumper. Even, it's hard to describe. This B car, though, in the Xfinity Series car, as we saw today in the real-life Xfinity race, there's not a whole lot of suck up to the guy in front of you. It's a whole lot of bubble, it seems. So the bubble is really big in this car, just because of the narrower spoiler, I believe. And then you can't pack near as much air as you can on the Cup cars. So if this ever does get implemented onto these Xfinity cars, I'm a little worried that, you know, it might take a special somebody or like someone to really, really get aggressive to actually make passes.
Yeah, I think that's certainly the case, and you know, I know one of the complaints is that sometimes we see a lot of single file racing in that new package, Justin. But I mean, you look on your screen right now, we've seen a lot of this for a majority of the night. Of course, out front we've had 2 wide pretty much the entire time, but behind this pack we've seen pretty much the same thing. You know, it drives a lot different, but the result for a lot of the pack is the same. They're all single file here through about the back half of the field.
And here's the thing, too, and we talked about this last night and seen this last night, you get the right group of people with the new Cup package for iRacing. You can race side by side. You can get the outside line against the wall to work. You can run 3 wide for position. You just need to have a lot of skill time and practice with it, as Blake mentioned a little bit. If you don't have that seat time with it, it's very difficult. It's a special skill set to be able to run super speedways in real life for a reason. It's supposed to be difficult to be able to run around. It's not as simple as run full throttle and go from there. You have to be thinking about your proper moves. You have to be technical. You have to be smart. You have to be strategic with how you race with that package.
There is a lot of forethought. And you know what? I'm looking, and again, I hate to continue to direct our attention away from the lead, but I'm looking at how this second pack is operating, and I think they've found a sweet spot where, look at Michael Frisch. So he was the leader for about a lap, and now he's falling to the back where Tristan Hagenstein is. Hagenstein fell back about a lap earlier, so Blake, I think this pack has found a way to make time by having somebody lead, have that second car in line, push them until they get really hot, and then they fall out of line about a lap later, and they are just starting to pick off a lot of time. It's the leapfrog strategy, as our production extraordinaire Zach Johnson puts in our booth chat here, that they lead for about a lap, they cycle to the back, and because of that, they're starting to make up 2-3 tenths a lap. They've been about 39 seconds back of this lead pack for about 10-15 laps, and the last 2 or 3 laps they've made up about almost half a second a lap. So they have found a method that works, and there you see Nate Stewart working to the outside and letting that car out front get some clean air.
Yeah, and one thing I want to point out, maybe producer, we can cut back and forth between the packs here. You see how tightly packed this second group is, and then you look up toward the front where the single file is behind the double wide. As we have some cars pitting, I believe that's RNC, Aaron Smith, Kyle Riley, Sean Butler, and Cosman are all pitting right now.
They pit, and Butler is around, and oh boy, he's in a terrible spot because he's got to back up and sort himself out, and he's just sitting there. Perhaps the car is stalled out, but nevertheless, going to be a frustrating evening. It was last night for Sean Butler. It is going to be tonight as well. As each trip that we have seen down pit road, it has come with some form of drama. As we're seeing a lot of calls here, Justin. Just about everybody going to be coming on to pit road this time by.
And that's exactly what I talked about when it came to Butler. If you don't practice your marks, there is the risk that you send it too hard into somebody else, and we've seen exactly that. Well, we see that here. Keep in mind that drivers have been sending it very aggressive already, several locking it up, in fact, trying to gain as much time as possible. Looks like no contact, though, this time.
We see a lot of smoke. I know running Rotopro the other night, Blake, I didn't see this much smoke when we were coming on to pit road. Everybody was being pretty conservative, but like you said, FTF aggressive, not the case here.
Yeah, it could be all on the setup. I'm noticing that maybe either the default set has a lot of front brake bias, or, when the fixed set here, when it gets on the brakes, it's hitting the splitter. That can also be a lot of, that could be a cause, rather, of lockups of the front tires.
Let's see, the default brake bias in the setup 65. So that's
not too high.
Yeah, that's not insanely high, but I think I've seen a couple cars where it looked like their splitter was a little low. As now we see the rest of the field come down here, and one car misses it, pack. 2 cars miss it. It's Horst, it's Doucette, or not Doucette, golly, Seth Noel. Maybe I'll get his name right once tonight. They both mess up, and yeah, that second pack that we talked about all night, they're out and away.
Yeah, they've made up a lot of time. They've actually passed almost the entirety of this pack, and they are now battling for the lead. That's Will Rogers leading the second train. I think they have a couple more cars on the tail end of their train. Yep, more and more are ducking up. I think they might get Brandon and Michael Guest here.
They just might get it, and mind you, these guys were not at the front of the pack, so they had a little bit of time to make up when they did it. Oh, one car in the fence, though, was Ryan Williams, and now Guest gets a nice little shot there from Tristan Hagenstein. He saves it. He'll get a little bit of damage out of it, and it looks like that line worked on the high side, and they're going to make their way by, and we're going to about stack it up 2-3 wide. Justice has the issue of he got off the pit road too well and all by himself, so he's going to be kind of a sitting duck by the time they get to him in turns 3 and 4.
Well, and Michael Guest elected to try work with him. I'm not sure about that decision, as that's going to check up the bottom hard, and now they're starting to slam into each other.
Matthews Wack picked up his left front tire and somehow didn't get turned around. Michael Guest had nowhere to go because Justice was on the bottom of the track and he could not find a way to go 3 or 4 wide around him. So Guest gets checked up, and after it all cycles out, it is Ryan Williams right now who leads this race.
This is incredible racing. I mean, these guys held it together. I'm not surprised given the SOF of this field, but, you know, FTF has some of the best super speedway drivers and drivers in general, so I'm really impressed that that all didn't produce a caution.
Well, and this all sets us up here at the later part of the race. 8 laps to go. They make their way by the lap traffic of Ryan Naraki, who had a little bit of damage, and they are starting to hard charge to the front. Here comes Derek Justice. He's giving a big push to Brandon Hawken there on the bottom side of the racetrack. Single file for your front 3, and Frisch spins into the 44, and that is going to be a caution. 3 or 4 cars involved here on the apron, even more.
Oh, Dunkaroos on the apron. If we can get a replay on that, the triple 3 of Ben Horst got rammed. It seemed he was parked down there. That's really strange, but a lot of good cars getting in this crash play.
A lot of our contenders there, and we'll eventually get a replay and see how all of this started. And you know, one of the things, Justin, when cycling out with these cars when they're coming out of pit road, big speed differential, and Frisch may not have been coming out of pit road, but that was just a bump draft, it looks like, gone wrong between he and Will Rogers.
Yeah, absolutely did. There was a bit of a checkup right there right before that, but man, just a tough break for a lot of drivers. And then you have Ben Horst down there who had an issue or something down on the last lap or so and was, I think, trying to pull off to park his machine. And he ends up being an innocent bystander in all this.
He does, and you know, that's one thing in super speedway races. A lot of times you end up wrecked, and it's not really your fault. You just had nowhere to go. Of course, with that, you get a couple of close misses. I think Sartaj Mann was able to find a way by through this wreck, got to split a couple of cars and keep on going. Had about 3 or 4 cars spinning directly in front of him. You see my pick, Michael Guest. As soon as I talk about how well he's doing, and you know, he's always there at the end, and we never talk about him on the broadcast. Of course, he gets wrecked out of that. So I'm sorry for the curse, Michael.
Curse always strikes at the plate races.
Broadcaster's curse.
A lot. I'm looking at, you know, couple of the guys that were in this crash. Brian Mercurio didn't seem to have too much damage. Same with Andrew Schwartz. I think they just locked up, caused a lot of smoke, but no actual dents on their race cars. However, you know, cars that are absolutely destroyed. Will Rogers, Ben Horst, the 7 of Matt Horton, you know, Austin Johnson, Sartaj Mann with a great avoidance. Same with Nate Rabideau. Yeah, just a bunch of front runners that are now seemingly out of this race.
They are, and of course, one thing new at FTF now, they will review incidents. They will assign fault with the implementation of the wreck score after we had a 34 caution effort back at Martinsville in the Cup Series. They instituted that for both the GNS Series and the Cup Series, and they'll put that as a bad bump draft there, Justin, as that'll assign the blame for that. And we'll get the green flag. We won't be in green-white checkered territory, though, when we get it. So it's going to be awfully close to almost a natural green-white checkered, or maybe a green-white checkered is what we'll get. But we won't be in that territory just yet. But I can imagine now we're 2 wide on this restart. We're going to stack them up. It's going to be chaos here to the end.
Yeah, and Justin, I kind of want to throw it to you. With a lot of the, you know, big names and front runners kind of out of the race here, who are 3 or 4, maybe even 5 guys that you have your eyes on?
How about Tristan Hagenstein, for one, who's who qualified well, but he's been running the back, was among that strategy group. He's now in good track position. He's one of the drivers who had a lot of success last night, to say the very least, coming away with that Super Speedway Championship. In fact, Blake McCandless, he's one of the drivers to keep my eye on. Also, we haven't talked much about Nathan Rabideau for throughout the night. He's in 11th position, up 14 positions. He's kept his car fairly clean. He's someone that might be able to make some moves now in the later stages here if he can get enough of a run and get himself to the outside. We haven't seen too much of Matt Danson tonight. We've seen him charge up in the late stages before the pit stops. In the 30 machine, up 25 positions. He rode in the back much of this race. And he's now that main effort for what's especially going to be an interesting team championship fight. They need to gain points on the 62 in the team championship, so I'm keeping my eye on him as well. And lastly, the key cars keeping an eye on in terms of that regard. How about Brian Mercurio as well, one of those drivers from the swap draft group as well. Mercurio's done a very impressive job in the 44 tonight, but he's going to be riding with a bit of damage here, so there's a lot of people you can keep an eye on, absolutely. It's just a matter of can they get themselves into position to execute for this race victory.
That's the question, and you brought up a point about a lot of hard chargers. How about the list of names that started up front, got their qualifying spot, got the track position early on, and are not going to have the results to show for it? David Schildhouse, our pole sitter, finishes dead last. That's one of the only times I've seen it in sim racing. You start first, you finish last. Schildhouse, unfortunately, in a wreck or, in that caution flag that ended the day of 6 different drivers. He gets the tail end of that. Donovan Strauss started in 8th. He ends in the 40th position. Justin Knobloch started up in the top 5. He finishes in 38th. Ben Horst was the outside to the front row. David Schildhouse, he finishes 34th. And just a long list of guys. You pretty much look at the top 10 right now, and it's almost an invert of the lineup that we started this race with.
Welcome to Super Speedway Racing and iRacing. It's the best way I can say on that, Blake Reynolds.
Yeah, it tends to be that way. How about a call, some people in the early teens here, they have clean cars. A lot of cars, while we haven't had too many wrecks in this race, there are a lot of guys with damage. Like just little dents to their bumpers, maybe, their fenders are pushed in a bit. But, I'm looking at cars, Sartaj Man actually has a clean car from my point of view here. He probably has a thing I can't see, but clean car. He just avoided that crash. But how about a call to Brett Pancari, Jonathan Oates, Ethan Quarter, and the 77 of Edwin Mendez, or Jake Poulin? How about that? I think he's our Daytona winner, if I'm correct there. Yeah,
he was.
He has a clean car. Oh wait, that's not Jake Poulin. That's Dylan Smith.
I got one. You got one too.
I got dunked on.
Yeah, I'm telling you, you identify with the paint scheme with the driver. It's hard to let it go. It'd be like if somebody just, I don't know, decided to run for Derek for a night. You would just look at that car and just instantly think, oh, it's Derek Justice. Well, guess what? It's not. But pace car will pull on to the safety of pit road. We'll restart with 3 to go. Not a green-white checkered overtime territory yet, but we may be in short order. Ryan Williams and Tristan Hagenstein, your top 2. An early jump there for Williams. Green flag's out. He's going to have to hope that he didn't get too big of a jump. And he's going to defend now with Brandon Hawken able to run up to the back of him.
Like he's dragging the brake just a touch bit to make sure that Brandon Hawkins stays on his back bumper, but Hagenstein's got no help whatsoever. He's getting ditched out to dry on that second line.
Oh, we are absolutely slam drafting here. Sorry, Blake. Oh my God, a lot of bumpers touching. I think we might have some weird contact happening here once everyone gets bunched up.
Well, I was about to say, I'm shocked that everybody's worked to the bottom all night long. We've seen multiple lanes work. I thought we'd be seeing 3 wide by the time we got into turn 3. And right now, everybody riding single file behind Ryan Williams. Eventually, we'll see somebody step out of line, and you're starting to see that form up now. Here comes Tyler Gary.
Yeah, but Gary's got not too much help outside of maybe Dave Walsh. And now there they go. Brandon Hawken now has shuffled out Williams. He goes up to the top of the slam draft.
Oh, one thing we need to give a call to, again, sorry, Blake. Another thing we need to give a call to in FTF, no yellow line rule. I just saw in the front straight with Kyle Riley in the 62. Might need to watch that here in the last 2 laps.
That did come into play late at Daytona. And oh, Gary is going to turn Hawken around. The race leader is involved in Ryan Williams. The whole front of the pack flies apart here on the back straightaway, and that will put us in green-white checker territory. Gary looked to go to the middle. Hawken went to block. They collect each other, and several cars, Nate Stewart, Brandon Hawken, Ryan Williams involved in that one, and we will see overtime here at Talladega.
And hard hits for some of those drivers indeed. It looked like Brendan Hawken expected the push from Gary a little bit longer, possibly left about a car length of distance between him and the inside line. And that's where the 026 seen the hold and the chance to move. And when Hawken realized it was too late, he was coming across the very front edge of the front nose of Gary's car. Some hard hits, and that's going to shake up the complexion of your contenders as a result here.
Man, Ryan Williams played the strategy perfect. He got out front there. He was part of that second pack. Oh, man. What a tough end to his night. And same with Nate Stewart. He was up front for most of the night. And Brandon Hawken, oh, man. Just, like Justice said, kind of a poorly timed move. Tyler Gary had the nose there. It was just a little too late.
Yeah, I think that fault could be with Hawken, because you can't really blame Gary for making that move late in the race. He poked his nose in there, and it's 2 to go at Daytona. You're coming to the white next time around, so you got to take every run that you get. And you see Ryan Williams there, slams in the inside wall, gets hit by Brandon Hawken, and you'll see it right here. This is a great view for Ryan Williams. It's clean, and well, not that view. He's getting slam drafted very hard, but you see he just has nowhere to go before he knows what even hits him. That extension on that wall is what barely gets him. And if that wasn't there, maybe that opening for the safety trucks here, he may have been able to drive off of the inside wall on that one, but unfortunately not able to do so. I will say, though, for being in the middle of all of that, the very center of all of it, Tyler Gary got out pretty well. He's still scored as the race leader, didn't get a ton of damage, so he's able to escape, kind of get away with that in a way, where he's not too hurt. You see a little bit of damage right there, but no, that was Nate Stewart. So Gary kind of escapes all harm there.
Yeah, Nate Stewart, he was in the crash, but he was scored back the second, but unfortunately, because of FTF's damage policy, he was missing his front end. He was unmodified. He had to come in and attempt to fix the damage.
That is part of the FTF damaged vehicle policy, and he'll have to go down and at least try to repair that race car. Of course, that's a method put in place to try and keep cars that could really be a hazard and stack up a line and be way too slow from ruining the end of this type of race. But, okay, green-white checker territory, and from what I'm looking at, Justin, I really only see about 10 cars, like Blake was talking about earlier, that don't probably have some form of damage to them.
Yeah, and we talked about how damage is going to be a major impact for some of these drivers and how they run in the pack, especially their ability to lead the pack. And now this is going to be where all that comes into play. If you've got a clean car and can get enough help, I think there's an absolutely great shot we see a great, crazy finish. But the thing is, a lot of the clean cars just don't have the track position. The interesting thing is going to be how Tyler Gary is going to fare out here now that he's got not just the rear damage, but the right front damage that's crumpled up right next to the super text as well as where the hood is. See how that plays out. Then you have Walsh that has the crunched him back in, especially with the spoiler. Matt Danson's the first driver with a clean race car. This is all going to play out intriguingly, interestingly. It's just going to be the matter of, can the lines work themselves together enough in time for the fight? It's going to be the biggest question.
Well, can you get formed up for this attempt? But Blake, of course, we look and we have the potential for 3 green-white checkered attempts here. So, it's not just the fact that you have to get ready one. You have to potentially get ready for 3 attempts at this. And I'm kind of curious too with that second pack that pit on that long green flag run. if they pit at a time where they have enough fuel to make it for 3 green, white, checkered attempts. That will be interesting to see if we end up going the distance in this one.
Yeah, I think they should. We've had plenty of caution laps. Granted, these cautions are the quickie ones, so I think we only have 2 or 3 laps in these yellows. But yeah, I mean, look at this cast of characters in the top 10. Tyler Gary, pretty good plate racer, kind of expecting to be up front, but, Dave Walsh, Matt Danson, Tristan Hagenstein, Matthew Zwack up into P5, and Sartaj Mann in that beautiful Racing Point, now Aston Martin, but Racing Point paint scheme in the 149, avoiding that one big pile up in a turn 1. Same with Nate Rabideau right behind him. They both avoided that crash. And then Ethan Quarter in 9th. Oh, the scoring's a little weird here. Evan Rice up there. It's really weird for Evan Rice to... he has horrible luck in this series. He's always getting damaged, always getting wrecked. And, hopefully I don't jinx him here. But, it's about time he gets a good finish in this league.
It is about time, and looking back and updating, at least from what I saw on that pit stop, so that group that pit by themselves, a group of about 5 or 6 cars under that long green flag run that we had, they came down on lap 42. Pit window's about 40 laps, so if this is our only attempt at a green-white checker, they may be good. If we go 2, if we go 3, you start to worry that one of those cars may sputter towards the end of this thing, because they'll certainly be cutting it close. They can save a lot under these cautions. I don't want to understate that, but you never know. Of course, it could be close on whether they can make it or not if we continue to drag this on. So as we restart here, it'll be Tyler Gary, David Walsh, your top 2. Gary will have control of the field as soon as the pace car pulls off, and this is one of the unique things about Talladega Superspeedway and the way it operates in iRacing. As soon as that pace car hits pit road, Gary has free reign to go whenever he wants. You don't typically see the leader go early because you don't want to get too big of a lead here, but you can also kind of catch the pack by surprise, and you'll kind of disform the pack a little bit. So we'll see what Gary elects to do, and it looks like he went there for a second, but he'll step back on the binders here, wait to go a little bit later. He'll wait for the green flag to come out from Barney the flagman, and you see Matt Danson lay back just a little bit, allow Gary to get ahead by about a car length as they work into 1.
Did he get too good of a restart as a result here is going to be the big question. Danson has an opportunity possibly to poke to the outside if he so chooses. Yes, he's trying it.
And Gary...
Sorry, Blake, go ahead.
Well, Gary throws the block. He tried to throw another one on Walsh. He's not able to get it done. He's got help with Hagenstein. Now they're 4 wide for the race lead.
Oh, my God. Oh, the whole field's coming, Blake. We're about to crash.
Oh, no. There it goes. Big wreck. Dead. Oh, no. The big one. God. Somebody just went absolutely flying there. I think it was Kyle Riley.
Oh, Kyle Riley's upside down. That's my car, unfortunately. Oh, no.
Well, we thought it could happen.
Oh, Brian Mercurio's going to flip over Kyle Riley here in turns 3 and 4.
Well, you love to see the good sportsmanship right there as he tries to get Kyle Riley back on his roof. Well, and he blew his motor because you can see he's still pressing the throttle. So he didn't get flipped over and he blew his motor. But nevertheless, we appreciate the effort to try and flip him over. But we were 4, if not almost a staggered 5 wide there. And there's a lot of room here at Talladega, Justin Prince, but not enough to fit that many cars. So we take another look down the back stretch at how this all unfolded.
Yeah, and you can see when the 4 wide started, my first thought was there's no way they make it to the corner, because you'll see right here, start to squish down as Walsh, slides up as Danson, and then pandemonium strikes. Just nowhere to go for just about everybody. Riley rides the catch fence at one point, and this collects about 2/3 of the remaining cars in the field with significant damage. So there goes essentially all the clean cars that we had left.
Yeah, I don't think anyone has a clean car now. Might have to take a pair of binoculars to find one, but I think there's very few that are scratchless here.
No, a lot of cars involved in that one. Keith Sherman was able to squeak on by, but Brandon Hawkin involved, Wyatt Tinsley, Dylan Smith, Matt Danson, Seth Noel, Sean Butler was able to just squeeze his way by. Jack Painter able to avoid all contact in the dirt. Austin Johnson, Edwin Mendez, Cosmo Nianeshu. Of course, Kyle Riley had a significant amount of damage. Andrew Schwartz, just a long list of names involved in this accident, as we have the big one here on our first green-white checkered attempt, but of course we didn't get it done, so we'll move forward to GWC number 2 as we continue to pace along here. And like you said, there's just not many cars left that are going to be able to compete with this thing.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure how this is going to now play out, but one of the drivers I talked about as a result here, Nathan Ravido, was among the drivers who survived the craziness. He's up to second, and it's to the point where Matthew Zwack now has a great shot. And wasn't he lifted off the ground with his left front at one point? This is now turning into what could be a crazy finish.
Yeah, I'm just looking here at the owners' standings. The highest, almost all of the top 5 in the owners' points are all out of this race. The 99 for Logitech G Altus Esports, that name's a little bit of a tongue twister, and the 30 from the same team, the 62 from Speed Inc., the 58 from Lowline. The highest running in the top 10 in owners, I believe, is Nate Rabideau in the Nexus Esports 93 car, 6th place. That might be a good amount of points he has the opportunity to close in on here.
And of course, those owners' points, I know we typically talk about in this series. There's, for most weeks that we come out here, there's kind of a different set of drivers that compete for the wins, and then a separate list that obviously come out here and are trying to win the GNS championship here. But those owners' points, they help a lot of these drivers qualify for these races. We had 41 drivers get sent home for this race, and 6 or 7 were determined by those owners' points. So if we have significant car counts like we've been seeing this year, those owners' points, they're a nice little cushion to lock you in, Justin, and this is going to be a big shakeup to that.
Yeah, this is going to be where a lot of drivers are going to be hoping they played this race a bit differently, or their luck played a bit differently now as a result. But look at the lead changes as well. 36 lead changes, and that's just at the stripe alone throughout the night. It's been a back and forth affair, but now it's the matter of, can this back and forth affair continue, or can that top line build up enough momentum now with several drivers leading it that are going to have damage?
That's the question. Again, on our first restart that we had before we got into overtime, I was surprised at how well the bottom line formed, that we weren't seeing more of what we saw right there on that last restart where we were going 4. We were even going 5 wide here down the Alabama Gang super stretch. Are we going to see that again? We've lessened the number of cars that are out here on the track that are able to keep up, so it may not happen as frequently throughout the field, but again, Blake, I think we saw right there with Tyler Gary, if you have a run, you're going to take it no matter what. You can't afford not to, and I think we're just at that stage of the race where we're very well going to see that, and of course we may even have one more set of green-white checkers before this is all said and done.
Yeah, and I've been a part and seen enough of these to know what's happening now. Now we're getting to the point where the damaged cars create kind of a pace difference on these restarts. RNG in a way of, being in a line that's slower because someone has a little bit extra percentage of drag to their car. I think this bottom line is the cleanest. Evan Rice has a lot of damage. Tyler Gary in that top line has quite a bit of front end damage. I don't know. I think Matthew Zwack has a good shot here, as well as Tristan and Sartaj.
Even Zwack, he has a little bit of damage as well, so keep that in mind, that the leader, he will be able to get a jump on this restart, so that may help him a little bit, but there's a lot of damaged cars out here. Pace cars off, field under the control of Matthew Zwack and Nathan Rabideau. And we're green, white checkered attempt number 2, as it looks like both lines getting away cleanly as they get up to full song and head to turn 1. Zwack with the lead, and here comes Rabideau on the outside. He's got a little bit of a charge coming in, and Justice trying to make it 3 wide as they enter 1.
Yeah, no one's going to go that early, especially in the middle of the corner, but at least as a thought process now, that at least opens up the door for some drivers to say, okay, someone might be willing to do it.
I think Zwack's got a lot of damage. He is checking up that inside line, and they are going nowhere. Some hefty bumps being given here. That high line is digging. Here comes Nathan Rabideau to the inside. Is Tyler Gary, who gets to make the move first. He gets to the bottom, and now he has control of the race lead with 2 damaged cars behind him, blocking both lanes.
Is Gary going to be able to defend? I think we're going to see the white flag. It's the matter, though, of how this white flag lap goes, and this could be haptic.
It could be. The white flag is out. We'll have one more trip around. They won't throw the caution flag, and we'll race back no matter what. Tyler Gary in the lead, Zwack and Rabideau side by side as they exit turn 2 for the final time.
Yeah, that top line just can't carry enough momentum to be able to close up to the race lead quite yet. They're going to need another car here for this to work. No one else is jumping out with them.
Well, I mean, every car has too much damage. Mann has a little too much. Derek Justice has too much damage. He's falling back. Nobody can get a run. But off of turn 4, they make contact for third. Here comes Zwack to the outside. Gary with the block. And now Zwack gets the bump from Rabideau. They touch. Gary is around. Hagenstein gets spun. Evan Rice is in it. Who's going to come out of it alive? It's going to be a photo finish. And it's Brett Pancari who wins this race.
Wow.
Over 24 one-thousandths of a second over Ryan Naraki.
Wow.
That's incredible.
What incident avoidance right there to thread the needle.
Brett Pancari says, oh my God.
I am speechless. Ryan Naraki almost got a win there. If he had 100 more feet, his nose would have been ahead. Oh, man. And how about a first-time winner in Brett Pancari, man? Oh, just picking up where everyone kind of failed for tonight. Oh, what a finish.
Entering turn 3, Brett Pancari was running in 9th. Ryan Naraki was in 11th. And they are the two that battle off of the corner to try and get to the line first and win this race. It reminds me of a Road to Pro finish I saw with Brad Wright just a little earlier this week. But you see Zwack and Gary make contact. That right hooks Gary, and nobody is able to escape except for those top 2. Everybody else involved in that one.
Just absolutely incredible. And at this point, Brent Pancari is going to be absolutely elated because he started that lap in 9th position, looked like he was going to be running with a solid top 10, and then the seas just part. They just open up for him to perfectly just drive it right on through full throttle.
And how about even Nate Stewart? He entered turn 3 in 17th position. He finishes in 3rd place. So the entire field was wrapped up in that one as Brett Pancari for sure gets the Hard Charger Award. Started back in 41st position and parks it in victory lane. And you know what? This is what we love about Talladega, isn't it, Blake Reynolds? So we can have a race like this. We have all the fast guys. They all wreck each other. Everybody just can't seem to hold it together. We see some great racing, and at the end of it all, Brett Pancari, a first-time winner at FTF, gets it done.
Yeah, and that's why these races are some of the most watched in sim racing and in real motorsport. Just, you never know what's going to happen. You know, attrition at a plate race, who would have thought? You know, you think everyone's got to have, you know, the lowest drag car, you know, the fastest setup, best driver. Well, as we've seen for years, it doesn't matter. Oh, I mean, what a race. What a finish right there. Some of the people getting top 10s out of this. Andrew Schwartz, I think he was in a couple crashes tonight. Nate Stewart, like you said, 17th to 3rd. How about Sean M. Butler getting a top 10? And Austin Johnson, too. He was in that big one entering turn 1 about halfway through this race.
There's a lot of strange names that were either at the front that are now at the back, or they were at the back and now they could even win the race. As we'll look at the results of this one to list it all out and see where your favorite driver finished. Brett Pancari wins the race after entering turn 3 in 9th place, emerges from the smoke and gets it done. He wins at Talladega. Ryan Naraki brings it home in 2nd in a photo finish. Nate Stewart is in 3rd, rounding out the podium. Tristan Hagenstein finishes 4th. Andrew Schwartz, he didn't have a front clip. He finishes in 5th. Brandon Hawken was in the lead pack during all that chaos. He finishes in 6th. Austin Johnson 7th. Sean Butler was involved in a caution very early on in this race. He finishes in 8th. Evan Rice got turned there late. He finishes in 9th. And Sartej Mann rounds out the top 10, Justin.
11th spot goes to Keith Sherman. Jack Painter in 12th position. Nathan Rabideau finishes in 13th. Jonathan Oates in 14th. From 40 up to 15th goes Wyatt Tinsley. Michael Guest finished upside down in 16th position. Walsh in 17th. Quarter in 18th. Noel and Justice, the top 20 in a crazy one.
I guess I'll take it from here. A little new at this, as we all know. I joined halfway through this race. Rookie broadcaster here. So we'll keep on going. Matthew Zwack in 21st. Tyler Gary, what could have been, in 22nd. Matt Dance in 23rd. Edwin Mendez in 24th in the 77 machine. 25th going to Brian Mercury in the 44. Cosman in the 84 and 26th. Aaron Smith 27th. Kyle Riley 28th. 29th going to Dylan Smith and Matt Horde in the 7th. 8 laps down in 30th position.
Ryan Williams in 31st, 10 laps down, 32nd to Will Rogers. Michael Frisch was 33rd. Ben Horst 34th. Jacob Fisher finished in 35th, 36th to Will Klein. 37th was Michael Cozy Jr., 38th Justin Knobloch, 39th Malik Ray, and 40th was Donovan Strauss. Jordan Worth 41st, 42nd to Mike McConville, and David Schildhaus started on pole. He finishes in the 43rd position, and we have finally caught up with our race winner tonight, Brett Pancari, FTF winner. How does that sound?
Oh my sweet God. I cannot believe I won. I am stunned beyond belief right now, guys. Jeez.
Well, we love to hear the excitement in your voice, and just take us through that last restart there. Obviously, you roll off from, about the 5th row and about 10th. You're just minding your P's and Q's. All the chaos starts in the tri-oval, and just take us along for the ride.
From what I can remember, because it was mostly like a blur, I was just basically on the bottom, and then when everything basically erupted in front of me, I just kind of stayed on the bottom, and it just kind of lucky how everyone just kind of shot up, and man, I barely got through everything. I don't know how I didn't hit anyone in that mess, and I don't sure if I even had enough speed to get to the line to hold off Ryan there, but I am totally shocked and stunned that I've won in FTF. I am stunned.
Again, I just love hearing the excitement that you get to come out here with, and I mean, it was a long race. You started all the way back in 41st. What was kind of your thinking throughout this race to put yourself in this type of position?
Well, I've always done this at super speedways. I've always stay in the back and lay in the back and wait as long as I can until eventually I get up to closer toward the front toward the end, because you got to be up there front toward the end. I mean, I know chaos will erupt like a volcano out here at Dega, but the only real thing I was kind of wasn't sure of was how much fuel I needed for the final pit stop. I took a bit of a guess at it. I think it was around like 6.8 gallons, and I was saving. I think I had like maybe 3 or 2 gallons at the end just because of the green and white checkers. But Talladega is just, I always lay back, wait till the end, and then it's just a coin flip after that.
Brett, if I may, I gotta ask, how much lead is in your right foot tonight? How much weight are we talking?
Maybe 5 pounds. I really don't know.
That seems like enough to win at Talladega, I guess, Blake.
Oh, it certainly is. Well, Brett, we'll throw the mic one more time. First time FTF winner. Know you have some people to shout out. This is your chance to do so.
Well, thank everyone at the FTF League for allowing me into this league. I knew coming in it was going to be super competitive and super tough to run. Like, I didn't even qualify for the first 3 races of the season. Then things slowly started coming around. I finally started qualifying for races. I didn't even think I was going to qualify tonight, but when I knocked out qualifying, I got the second fastest time, and I was shocked by that. But just thanks to everyone running the league, the admins like Jake Pullen and Kyle Riley, among other ones. But I got to also thank Patricio Esteban at Daco Designs. He's the one who made this Princess Daisy car. It's kind of like my main paint card, my calling card now, because I had this weird dream one night that I was in a Princess Daisy costume, and I do have one, by the way, running this particular paint scheme. And I was like, you know what? Let's just do it. I mean, I got different paint schemes anyway, but a lot of the paints he's done for me has just been absolutely incredible throughout. And I thank all you guys at STN for broadcasting. And I don't think I'm going to be going to sleep anytime soon. I might be jumping around my house for like 5 hours after this.
Well, Brett, it says on the back of your car, coming through, and you did it tonight. You came through right at the end there to get the win. Congratulations from all of us, and nicely done on your victory here in the Kicking the Tires 200.
Thank you, guys.
Woo! All right, well, guys, I think that's pretty self-explanatory. First-time winner, and you love to hear the opportunity that this provides, and man, I just love hearing the excitement in his voice. It's refreshing to hear because, sometimes we just get used to having the same people win all the time. They kind of expect it, but it's really nice to see stories like this and guys like Brett Pancari that are able to finally get out here and get it done.
Yeah, and I don't know anyone that shows that much or that amount of emotion. I have no idea. I don't win anything, as you guys know. I haven't won in anything. So, I mean, Justin, do you know anyone who's that excited after a win?
I mean, there are a lot of people, but that was extreme excitement, and you can tell that he wanted to win this big time, especially since drivers talk about it all the time, both Blakes, that FTF is considered by some to be one of the best leagues to be in because of the competition level and because of all the big names that take part. And we've seen how much he wanted to win and come out on top in this type of race tonight, in this type of field. The emotion is there. Absolutely excited, to say the very least. What a finish, and what a way to thread through the needle to take that checker flag.
I can remember once upon a time running some NR 2002 back in the day and getting my first win. And, it's just one of those things. It's so exciting when it finally happens and it all comes together. We love that tonight is that night for Brett Pancari. But that'll wrap it up for us here at Talladega Super Speedway, and what was a thrilling night, to say the least. So for everybody here at STN and the FTF Grand National Series presented by Bar Visuals, my name is Blake McCandless, and for everybody on our broadcast team, Justin Prince, Zach Johnson, and Blake Reynolds stepping in late, I'm Blake McCandless saying so long tonight from Talladega, where we bid you farewell, and congratulations to your winner tonight, Brett Pancari.